Just sitting here having a nice little discussion of current events.
Hi,
Which current
Buzz.
events are
Nice to
those?
meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
I love your videos.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I love. Actually, I really appreciated your mouse and keyboard video. That made my life so much easier.
No, well, good. I'm glad.
Um.
I'm absolutely glad.
Oh, but yeah, I flipped my fucking shit, and apparently everyone's focusing on that versus the sustenance of what I've been saying in my videos.
Well, that's what happens whenever you get emotional people focusing on that. They'll get lost in that instead of the actual things that you're trying to discuss or the important things you're trying to bring attention to.
Yeah.
And that's why I generally try not to engage with retards too much.
Yeah, well, somebody has to, man. Honestly, like, God, man, like, you got to get through to these guys somehow, you know. And it looks like it's been successful, like, regardless of all the flack I'm taking. The needle's been moved on the conversation on light fighters and master modes and their place in the persistent universe. Like, should X-wing pilots be the end all be all? What is Star Citizen's true end game, right? So
Well, it depends on who you ask. I just recorded audio anyway for a video I was doing about light fighters and whatnot, since that seems to be all the craze and something I tend to want to talk about in general is the balance of the mechanics of the game or lack thereof. But light fighters are more just a symptom of the fact that there's really nothing in the game to do that has any real substance. So people just gravitate towards whatever's easier. Light fighters are the lowest barrier of entry. All you have to do is spawn in and grab one. You don't have to put on a flight suit if you don't want to, and then you can access the game. Everything else in the game requires a modicum of investment and slight logistics, quote unquote, to actually do.
yeah, the logistics chain for anything is just a nightmare under the current conditions. So, I mean, yeah, the appeal of a light fighter is there, I guess, but it's the arguments that these guys put forward, that really bug me and annoy me. Coming from that part of the community in the past and knowing these guys very well, and for them to sit here and try to keep cruising speeds in the game after years and years of fighting to remove cruise mode from dogfighting. The only reason I can see behind it is some type of financial or social gain out of doing so, because I know for a fact that none of these guys like this flight model. That, like, in the beginning they all hated it, and over the years they've just gotten used to, like you said, just gravitating toward the easiest fucking thing, and they've, just like Renegade in the past, or any other notable gaming group, they want to maintain their spot in the hegemony, like you pointed out, right? Like I've pointed out, like a lot of other people have pointed out, and talking about the bias and talking about why people have the bias and identifying the bias, while still simultaneously listening to what they have to say. Virgil ain't doing that shit, right? So that's why I lost my temper, because they want to sit there and say that everyone's feedback matters, but at the same time completely discredit and invalidate not just you but me as well, and other people who are the dissenting voice against the current light fighter meta. So, you know,
The light fighter meta, as it were, is I think it's less to do with the light fighter. It's more to do with just that type of gameplay is most effective. These types of people will gravitate towards whatever within reason is the most effective thing to do to win fights. The reason why I don't think they'll gravitate towards larger ships are because a lot of them just don't have friends and their coordination skills are quite poor. So it behooves them to have light fighters or really any single seat fighter, whether it's light, medium, or heavy, being top of the food chain. So, of course, you're going to protest whenever there's any threat to that. And when there's any type of even suggestion that a larger cruise ship will potentially be more powerful and require a lot more of them to take down or deal with, they're going to cry about it. They're going to make accusations, they're going to say that, oh, Buzz advocates for mindless or gameplay. This is what he did in X, Y, and Z games. I mean, they obviously don't know anything about me, there's this erroneous thought that larger numbers are going to come at no cost. Of course, they're going to come at a cost. They're going to come at some form of logistic tax. They're going to come at opportunity costs and a variety of other things. But if groups can actually organize larger amounts of players to do things together, then yes, they absolutely deserve to win because it's more effort. It's more out of game effort and in game effort.
And it's an MMO.
Oh yeah, it's an MMO.
Like the smart ones should look at the missions, and when you get an Idris, can one Gladius beat one Idris?
But yeah,
In the current standpoint?
yes,
No. There's not even
in the
enough
current
firepower.
standpoint, yeah, it doesn't have enough firepower. Mathematically, in theory, given enough time, yes, it mathematically is. In practical, no. But my issue with that too is these ships that have size 3s and higher. Let's not even look at the Idris. I mean, let's look at the Hammerhead, the one of the worst ships in the game. You know, it doesn't do its job. It's meant to fight, you know, any type of fighter and whatnot, and it doesn't do its job. It gets outrun. It doesn't have. There's no objective for it to really defend anyway. But you know, I digress on that. If looking at it in a vacuum, it has no role, and if it did have a role, it would be easily overwhelmed and destroyed by what is designed to encounter or to counter, rather. Excuse me.
That's just because they fly too fast.
They fly too
It's kinda-
fast. It's also because the shields do not have a constant regenerating effect. That's one thing that would go a long way towards fixing it. If you were to put in a constant regeneration even under fire, you could inefficiently bring the shields down with a large amount of light fighters, but coming so would bring a great risk to those light fighters. It would also emphasize you bringing other things to actually defeat the larger ships like you're supposed to.
Right. You're
And
actually using heavy fighters.
That's assuming that the pilot of the Hammerhead is also putting all power to shield, because why the hell wouldn't you?
Oh, right. You know, why wouldn't you? But it's again, it's like I said, if they had it so that the shields were constantly regenerating, it would further widen that gap between the light fighter and other larger ships. That's how I feel that, you know, any size 3 should be is a constant regeneration. That way you're more encouraged to bring things like gladiators and any other type of torpedo attack ship. That way you can actually attack and harm these larger ships. Because if it really, if nuts comes down to it, right? If you want to defeat a hammerhead, let's just use a random number, right? You would think that comfortably a hammerhead could handle with 7 players in it. You know, it could handle 10 light fighters because that is what it's designed to fight. And we're assuming they're all voluntarily fighting. It won't. They can disengage whenever they want to, and those shields aren't going to last against 10 light fighters, regardless of what their firepower is or how low it is.
Yeah, they'll just hit and run and cut you to death until you finally get into hole. Yeah.
Yep. You know, armor could fix that. Regenerating shields. I mean, that's a big thing I'm trying to push for is constantly regenerating size 3 shields. That way, your intended counter, which would be something, you know, an escorted bomber, and, you know, we'll assume the bomber is anything that's designed, including the Inferno, anything designed to counter that larger ship being escorted would be your counter. But this is not the way it works.
Yeah, it's actually something I talked about in a video I posted. Correct fleet mechanics, right? If you look at modern, like just today, modern day, F-14 isn't pulling off missions by itself. It's escorting bombers onto target. You know, it's not going to take down an aircraft carrier by itself. It might escort, you know, drop ships onto target. But to your point, there's always another ship, and it's not how it works right now because you can just do it all with a light fighter pretty much, or a
Yeah.
few light fighters.
Any single seat fighter can do it now. That's the issue. Even, you know, people like to get lost in the weeds and they'll try and harp on the terminology, but that's why I consider anything that's single seat to be a light fighter for any type of discussion purposes. The people who argue against it are obviously very disingenuous. It doesn't take, you know, a genius to see right through it and what they want. And that's why people honed in on, even on my, you know, big video I did. They were saying, oh, well, you know, this guy doesn't want there to be skill. And even though very clearly in the video I said that good players will always be good, but what I want is more accessibility and more chances for bad players to become average and for average players to become good.
All
But they
right.
don't.
And that's,
They don't look at that way.
That should be the goal, man. Honestly, like, you know, if like everybody just can't be bad, like worse than you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand how that works. Like, I've trained so many people in this game, and they've wound up being fucking light years better than me. You know, I'm proud of that, man. You know, and people should be proud of that. But they feel the opposite, just like you said. They don't want to lose, right? They just have such an investment in that.
They're nice to you until you become a threat to them, and then they're no longer nice to you.
Yeah.
My issue with having a game that requires you to, and the keyword here is requires you to seek training from other players, I think it's not a very good design. I'm a big fan of very intuitive systems that a player, through naturally playing the game, can grasp and learn on his own.
Right.
I don't want to go seek out other people. If I want to, I will, but I don't want to have to, and that's where the big issue is here: is that you have to.
But see, here's the thing I'm going to tell you about that is that, like, when I train people, yeah, I show them a few little tricks, sure, but like the core of my training is coming down to like what you did with controls, right, and how to set them up properly, understanding the systems in which you're using, like, understanding what G-Safe is, understanding what ESP is, understanding like how many G's you can pull before you black out. Like these are the things that I try to teach people, right? And through the gameplay itself, they learn, right? They learn how to keep their nose on target. They learn how to roll in and out of fire. They learn all this stuff naturally, but it comes down to what controls they're using, right? And like I said, your mouse and keyboard video just made my life so much goddamn easier because I don't play mouse and keyboard. I play throttle and stick and throttle. So it's like one of the things I preach is like you find what you like and you're comfortable with it, and then you just tune it accordingly to what you could do with it and get good with it, right?
Right, you have to understand the methodology.
Right.
Are you familiar with Kenshi, Buzz?
I know of it, yes. It's like a sandbox
When
game.
Kenshi first came out, there was zero tutorial for this game. And now they have tutorial in the forms of readme clicks as you discover things. So it makes it a little bit easier. But Star Citizen, you have that small tutorial at the very start, and then after that, you're on your own. But the tutorial doesn't cover even.
People, I don't do tutorial. I simply don't do it. If I play the game, I learn as I'm playing the game, and that's why I rely on intuitive play, and that's why I'm somewhat against tutorials with too much effort into them. If I really want to learn something, I'll get a manual, but they don't have those anymore.
Well, a manual, like just a basic manual that tells you what the functionality of the systems you're using, and
Right, like
what each slider does. Better descriptions. That I think that would be more than enough of a tutorial, right? Because once people understand how everything moves and how to shoot and aim, everything else just kind of like falls in place. Like you're talking about, like natural discovery of technique, right? Because you can't teach technique, and tutorials.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say technique. I'm trying to say like alt in, left alt in for doing your hanger. Where does that ever get told to anybody unless you go into your keybinds to look at it?
Yes, those are not. Yes, those are types of things that could be done through a context. You can have a do it. So yes, those are things that should be covered.
Well,
But it's
that's what I'm trying to say is like
yeah,
tutorials should just cover like the very basics of getting a ship off the ground with a keyboard only. Like you could do joystick, but that's advanced play. But just at least cover the keyboard basic controls to get off the ground, fly to some outpost, land, and get out on the outpost.
sure.
And I'm not looking for like a super advanced tutorial of, oh, this is how you do ESP, this is how you do turning and all that jazz. This is everything else. It's just no, I just want you load up in your hab, you go to the hangar, which honestly just that track alone takes a lot of new players hours, if not days. Because some of these places are big, like Macrotech.
And confusing.
Nothing is intuitive. There's a lot of things that work against a player. The respawn mechanics themselves work against a player. That's one of the things I'm working on. It's a pretty large document. Again, what lessons I learned from Planetside, working on that and whatnot. But there's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense, and there's a lot of things that don't go with the. I don't like to use the phrase industry standard, but that don't meet the expectations of what players are now. That never means that you're advocating for dumbing down or stupiding of the game. But what it does mean is, for example, let's look at the tutorial. Talk about spawn mechanics. One of the things I want to advocate for are multiple spawn points, not just your bind point. But the biggest, most elegant fix would be the ability to, or the option to spawn at the nearest spawn location that you can spawn at. So, for example, you're a new player. You do a tutorial. Takes you from Area 18, tells you to get into a ship, and tells you to go to Bajini Point. So you're on your way to Bajini Point. You land, you crash, you blow up your ship. What's going to happen is the game is going to send you right back down to fucking Area 18, and you're going to have to ride the fucking train and do all that stupid shit all over again.
Correct.
Players are just going to quit. I'm going to quit. It's fucking retarded. Now, if you die at that station or somewhere close, doesn't matter where the fuck you die. Whatever is the nearest spawn point should be an option for you to spawn at. That alone would fix a tremendous amount of issues. It would make events, yes.
Nice. That would be so nice, and it would make events a lot easier instead of having everyone, herding cats. All right, boys, get to the medical place and set your spawn. Get your shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is all very stupid shit, and that is the purpose of a very long document that I'm making. And I try to keep my stuff. I don't make things long for the purpose of making them long. I try to keep it short as possible. Certain things do tend to run on. This is essentially a design document. I don't expect it to go anywhere, but there's a lot of things in this game that would be fixed by players having a nearest spawn option. Right now, a big problem too with the spawn system is that, let's say you want to go do something, you want to go and make a mobile base. Let's use that for an example. Let's just say you want to spawn at a Carrick, which that alone is its own problem because a Carrick is an inaccessible. Anyway, I digress. So you go to do JT. You say, all right, we're going to go spawn on this place, have a closer spawn point. That overwrites everything else. So if the ship blows up or there's a bug in the game, let's say your spawn point is normally Grimhex. Well, now you're back at your goddamn home planet. So it just overwrites everything. You're back at your home planet. Time to log out and go play a different game.
Yeah.
If you had
45 minutes to get back out to your friends. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's why I don't play very much. If I have the option to go play something, Gus. If I have the option to go do something else that's less time consuming, I work 7 days a week. Today my only day off. 6-7 days a week. If I don't mind spending time in a game, but I do mind wasting time.
Yeah,
And there seems to be a large amount of people in this community that equate wasting time with hardcore or depth. People will say, "Oh, well, there's no load screens in Star Citizen." What the fuck is quantum jump? That's a load screen with extra steps. I'm not saying get rid of quantum jumping, but what I'm saying is let's alleviate some of these pointless time sinks. Let's add something like a nearest spawn point. If you're doing JT, and I'll move on to the Carrick as an example. Say you're doing JT. You're on a moon or planet or whatever the fuck it is. Let's say it's on Hearst. You go down to JT, you fight there, a couple people die. Well, if you didn't sit yourself at HL1, you're all the way back at Grimhex or wherever the hell you may be. You got to fly back out there. If it just automatically let you pick the nearest spawn and it would send you to like HL1 or something, you get back in a fight in about 1 or 2 jumps. It makes JT more exciting, makes it more accessible, makes it more action-packed, makes it more fun. It lowers the barrier of entry into the event. I would take it one step further. There's absolutely no reason why players cannot spawn and set a spawn point to the mining facility, as an example. It wouldn't take too much time to redesign the mining facility. Why don't we have a planetary spawn point? Should be able to spawn on the planets. Set your buy point to the planet.
I don't know
All those
about
types of.
that.
Why not?
Because it would require putting hospitals on moons and planets and everywhere else, right? And it would take away from the Apollo, would take away from the Pisces and the Carrick, right? And the 890 jump. And the reason why you have these spawn ships is to for a ground force to get back in the fight quicker, right? When we're talking about pilots, I can get behind you on that, right? But like trying to get like a respawn point for Marines, like maybe 50 kilometers away from the objective, that's a hard maybe. You know what I'm saying? Because like when you say mining facility, like the first thing that comes into the Star Citizen's mind, or even my mind, is no hospital, right? So like if there was actually like a clinic or something on the planet or on the Celestial, we'll just say Celestial, then yeah, I could get behind that. But not turning a mining station into a respawn point. I don't think that's going to be a big sell. Or I don't think that's going to be an easy sell for the Persistent Universe crowd. But
I disagree.
like-
you just put one on there.
I feel like the easiest sell you could do and be in between those two is the major points like Seraphim, Bajini Point, and the other two that I can't remember off the top of my head. if those were selectable at anywhere. Whereas in like the Lagrange points, you had to go to and set your point specifically at the Lagrange point, and then you could have your home station or your home planet be your fallback, but you can't go and select the other home planets unless you go and set your thing up.
To Buzz's point, if there was the ability to spawn on a outpost, maybe no hospital bed to heal yourself, but maybe a spawn point on an outpost at least. If you think about the first time you ever played World of Warcraft, right? You don't spawn in Stormwind. And that would be a way easier, digestible experience for a new player. Like, here's an outpost. The pad is right there.
The one thing that goes to my mind, like I listen to y'all, but like the respawn system is tied in with medical beds. That's why I bring this up, right? Like they would have to create a new way of spawning in the game for that to work. Is what I'm trying to.
You
I
just put
think
the bed-
medical beds. I think medical beds would still have a purpose in healing, like troops and things like that, or extending gameplay without having to go back to a hospital. But really, there's only how many ships do we have right now in the PU that can spawn people? The Carrack?
They're going to 80-90.
How many people actually get that out for spawn operations, realistically?
I don't.
A lot.
It's unfeasible.
Currently,
For the Carrack, some organizations, Imperium specifically, they do pull it out when they have more than like 5 people, just because we'd be dumb.
All right, I'm going to show you guys something here. Let me, if you don't mind, let me turn my stream on here.
sure.
If that's okay. And definitely don't, like, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I just request that you don't show this.
I'm not.
So I'm not done. I'm not done with it.
I don't do that to people.
All right. So this is the document that I'm working on. You can see it's quite large here. And a lot of these things are very much in design. You know, there's terminology and all that. But the purpose of this document is to outline a potential suggestion, at least for ideas to fix the problem. So I do mention med beds in here. And let me find that. So I do have a terminology here. And a med bed I would consider to be a soft spawn under the terminology. So I'll read it as a destructible spawn point, such as a tier 2 medical bed on a Carrack or an 890 jump. Such spawns can be disabled through combat and are generally unreliable, but have the potential to be the most accessible content. So that's what I would consider to be a soft spawn. Now, what goes with this is I'm also advocating for things like the Pisces, the Red, or anything that has a medical bed to be a spawn point. Now, there's a reason why that's all. There's a reason why I think that's okay. There's also a reason why I advocate for those. If you do, let's be real here, medical quote-unquote gameplay is totally lacking. Anything that doesn't allow you to spawn at the bed is just a glorified IV for food. And currently the only two, now it used to be that the Red you could spawn at. But the problem comes from the ability to, that's what I'm looking for. It comes from the ability to easily access these things. And this is why I was even advocating for, if you're in a party that has an active player in this ship that's active within a certain distance, is an optional spawn point. Now, one of the things here, you talked about hard spawn. I define this as a hard spawn, which is what you were talking about, Defanos, about beds, right? Hard spawn is a non-destructible spawn point, such as a station, medical clinic, or hospital. While these are not disabled through combat, they could be disabled through reputation, criminal activity, or ownership changes. So this is just the terminology purpose of a point of this document. I outlined the mechanics. But the idea here is to set up a sense of multiple spawns. You have the soft spawn, which is what I advocated. It kind of gives purpose to these medical ships that we're talking about, so you don't lose the purpose of them. You have the hard spawn, and it's, you know, on the planet, because you could just add a small clinic with a bed if that's all you need. Everything's modular in Star Citizen anyway, so they could do that, no problem.
They could.
Safer home spawn is obviously the planets, you know, and is defined here as a non-destructible spawn point to which the player can always respawn. There should always be at least one of these. Examples would be primary residence or grim hex if criminal. So we already established that. And this is the important one here: spawn resources. The resources available to a player at a spawn point. An L1 station, for example, has local storage of weapons, armor, refinery shops, ship terminals, etc. A Carrack only has what was stored on the Carrack. So this is going into a more deeper logistical gameplay of the game.
Right.
That might help understand, what I'm trying to go with here.
And I tried to fill that gap in the past by, blowing up ships with cargo and creating the 2 SU containers to keep inside of these bigger ships when we ran these little events or operations, so that when they did respawn, they would have access to armor and kit on the ship, right? But now that we've got the
Correct.
cargo system, it's a lot easier for me to do that. Like, it's like I just throw a box. There's the armor. There are the guns. There's the food box. Let's go, right? I don't have to go
Yeah.
through all those extra steps. So
No, that's good. I would like to see that also, simplified, because we got the boxes and whatnot. So I'd like to see that as well, made easier to get these things. But to go here, I want to touch on this real quick in this document. You mentioned the convenience or the resource, right? You spawn somewhere. The idea here is that, let's go back to the mining facility because it was a point of contention. The idea, and I use that as an example, it could be anything, but I just use the mining facility because it would be the lowest form. It would take the least amount of development time to add because it's already there. But you don't have a whole lot there. It only has very basic shit. So you've got like whatever light armor, a couple weapons, whatever it may be, and the option to pull a few ships, more than what you can pull now. It's more of it's very much a excuse me. It's very much a stopgap. It's a way to get you back to either get your body or to get somewhere else.
I have an idea, like what you're doing. I like what you're putting out, but like, what about reworking the survival shelters instead, right? Instead of people going to the mining outpost, how about we?
Oh, sure.
We can
The mining out, yeah. It's just an example.
Right?
Yes, it's not a hard cat rule. It's not a hard cat rule. It's just it's there as an example because people visit. I never visit the shelters, right? But I always visit a mining outpost. So this is very much so. Yeah, when I'm writing a design document, I put forth examples, and then it's up. It's not more of a brainstorming document, but it's an idea. And like, yes, so you're correct. So yes, it could be anything planetary. It doesn't have to be the mining facility. But now, what I've learned from showing you this is I'm going to be very specific about that this is just an example because I don't want people to kind of get lost in the weeds and focus on the mining outpost. Right. It could be any new outpost for that matter. So let's go down here to what I have. Go what we have here to address some of the other concerns. So here we go. This is what we're talking about. You talked about medical ships. And I have it as nearest mobile spawn within a reasonably short range. Now, the way I would envision this, and I do cover the UI down there later, but I'll read this here, is the nearest mobile spawn point within a reasonable short range. This would be any mobile spawn to which you have access that is nearby. An example would be a Carrack in your party, or other location with a medical facility capable of spawning players. This is the most convenient spawn location, as close as possible to your death location. However, it also has the lowest resource, as there's potentially no equipment at all at this location. These should, at the very least, have some basic spacesuits available after spawning, like a medical facility at a station. This gives great value to being in a party with people with these ships, as they will allow you to quickly rejoin the group should you die. However, to make the most of this, you need to plan ahead for that eventuality and have some equipment on standby. So that is the purpose here, is not to diminish resources or logistics or dumb it down, but it is to add a level of accessibility that also will reward planning. Because if you do stock your Carrack, for example, you will have things. If you don't, well, you just got a basic ass white flights.
Yep. I mean, we use the Carrack now because we don't have, like, if we had a ship with a medical bed and dropship capability, like, let's say the 890, which is uncommon, but logistically would be one of the better ones to use for these kind of things. Then yeah.
Well, what's interesting about those is if you gave med beds, or any ship with a med bed, the ability to spawn players, they kind of become a self-fixing problem. People would go, okay, well, what's the purpose? What how are you going to stop people from just mindlessly going back to the objective? Well, you can spawn somebody at the ship. Like, let's say you have a Pisces, right? Let's say you're running with like 10 dudes. A Pisces is not going to carry enough equipment for 10 people.
No.
So it's very much entry level and very much a stopgap measure. Whereas a bigger ship, say the Apollo, if ever comes into the game, you could potentially carry a lot of equipment for players. So a group of 10, maybe, if they fail a lot, they might be able to efficiently respawn and get equipment twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, depending on how much of his equipment can be stored on the ship. So it's a self-fixing problem. The Pisces is a little bit, the Red's a lot, and you kind of get the idea from it. It doesn't require too much. It's a very elegant solution. I like to call them elegant because it doesn't require too much additional programming or anything like that to make these happen. Because, as you probably remember, you used to be able to spawn a colorless Reds.
Yeah, and I mean, they already have the assets, so it would really just be about placement and
Yes.
all that stuff. So the only coding that you're proposing is being able to spawn at the closest medical bed around you. That's the only like real change in coding I see here. Maybe I'm just being ignorant, but
no, you're not. The other one I actually mentioned this example to you is respawn examples. Examples of respawn options per the proposed system. New player crashes while landing during tutorial. A new player is loading Star Citizen for the first time and manages to take off out of the hangar and fly upwards towards Bikini Point. However, being new to the game, they don't quite stick the landing and instead crash into Bikini Point and blow up. That player's respawn options would be Area 18, their default primary residence set when they first started, or 2, Bikini Point, the nearest station to where they died, as they died crashing into it. The player can then choose whether to go back to Area 18 and try the whole thing over again, or simply pick up at Bikini Point as if they had actually landed successfully and continue their adventure.
yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not. It's like it's just selling it to the rest of the community is where it all is, man. Like, you know, getting the community to talk about it and embrace the idea is the first step, right? If you can get everyone behind what you're talking about, then CIG would be more inclined to do it for sure, but you know, just not in a strong-armed manner. You know what I'm saying?
Right. They have to at some point accept that the community has to accept that whatever original ideas they had are long gone. Games change, times change, people's expectations. That's not an indication of dumbing down. There needs to be a level of accessibility and convenience because convenience can ruin a game, but unnecessary tedium can also ruin a game. And I would say right now, Star Citizen is very heavy on unnecessary tedium.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I watched that video of yours talking about unnecessary chores, I believe is what you said, or the tediousness of it. Yes, you're correct. If we could just shorten that window even by a little bit, then it would keep players engaged a little bit longer for sure, or keep them inclined.
They shortened it a lot with salvage, at least for the Vulture.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
This is why I'm working on this now, because you mentioned the Vulture. That's what they're open to it. So that's going to be a very big video, very big post. We got a lot of work to do. That's draft 1, so I've got a lot to draft up. But that's generally the idea that I'm pushing for, because I think that's one of the most important parts of the game that is not being spoken about, because people either don't think about it or don't really realize it. They might not be able to realize why they're not having fun or why they're annoyed. But I can see it.
Very good insight.
They may also just be people that are running around in a single-seater fighter, just want to blow shit up.
Yeah, well,
ERTs.
There's nothing for them to worry about. They have the easiest access to content.
Yeah.
You know, that's also, I think, what I also cover in the document as well. I specifically mentioned that gameplay loop as the most accessible because it requires nothing of you. Therefore, do that. I would say salvage is similar. I actually mentioned salvage, and let me find it here. I'll read it off to you. Let's see. I'm going to find it here.
Yeah, salvage doesn't really have a learning curve, does it? I don't think about it.
No, but also salvage lets you create your tool. So salvage is also very accessible because you didn't have to go buy a tool. You go, you respawn, you put on your white flight suit, you get your ship, you create your tool.
So, I wanted to talk to you about the factions idea, or the faction gameplay idea that you had, right? Have you ever heard of the game called Mortal Online 2, or Mortal Online in general?
Yes, I know about Mortal Online.
So do you know about the murder count system?
I know very loosely about how it works.
Okay, so when I was listening to your video about that, you know, I was like, you know, I I could see I could see that if we had like, you know, more than just humans to play, right? Or if we had like more factions to choose from outside of just, you know, Ninetales or UEE. I mean, and that would make more sense, like that whole like dynamic. But I like that. But what if we added more flavor to that by, you know, making it to where people that murder people too much disproportionately, unlawfully, or pad ram too much, for example, or, you know, do hanger shenanigans, if you will, too much, right? Um, or permanently red for a time, right? You know, in Mortal Online, you had, I think it was a 2.5 hour timer for each murder you committed. So, you know, if you had 10 murders, it would take more than a day for those murder counts to fall off of you, which would essentially lock you out of going, you know, and using the priest or services in town or anything like that, you know, because everybody hates you. You're a murderer.
I'm fully behind that type of behavior. I'm fully behind those type of systems because I like choices to have consequences. I like the consequence. Consequence is not always a negative word. Consequences can be fun. You know, if you want to live the life of a player killer and you're going to always be red, then that's how you choose to live. And those choice you made and the consequences are that. I think those are fine. I like factions in games, whether they're a soft faction or a hard faction. I enjoy factions. Right now, all players start off as a UE citizen, and where you go is based on what missions you do and what faction you align yourself with. Factions also tie into that document that I'm working on as well. So I'm very big on that. You know, Pyro is an example. You can extend the spawn system to Pyro because it's a scalable system. It's a scalable idea. You go to Pyro. You start doing missions in Pyro for one of the gangs. You gear up those gangs. You gain access to their spawn points. So it's a very scalable solution to a problem that people might not realize is actually a problem. And I'm all about you aligning yourself with something because it's better for players and it also adds a better element to the gameplay, in my opinion, when you're actually aligned to something.
It also gives players not really a sense of security, but a sense of like, you know, awareness of like who is the friend foe around you. You know what I'm saying? So you're not always guessing if the blue flying around you is gonna go cyber psycho and just fucking AWOX you and your friends. Right?
Yeah, that's
So,
yeah. That's another good thing that you want from that is you want there to be an understanding of where people are actually standing and what they're hoping to accomplish or what they're what their intentions may be. If they're red, you know that they're probably going to attack you, and you can prepare yourself, accordingly.
Or prevent them from getting on your ship and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Make it harder for them to do what they're doing right now, for sure. But
Yeah, those are all the things I want.
I mean, the trespassing thing that they did for ships at least helps a little bit.
yeah, it does. You can kill people that you don't want on your ship. Yeah.
I mean, it brings different form of griefing possibility, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I don't really agree with the word griefing unless you're actively doing something outside the bounds of the game to ruin somebody's experience. But yes, it's the whole system is very poorly fleshed out, and what my main concern is that the game is this far along in development, and we don't even have a lot of the basics down yet, and that's what concerns me. You know, given not just because of how much I've backed into the game, but because I do want the game to be good. And I see a lot of the warning signs I saw when I worked for SOE. I see a lot of the warning signs of I'm not going to say the word incompetence, but not understanding what they're doing. Not understand. It's a very easy mistake to make, especially when you're working on an MMO and there's things you have to consider that you don't have to consider in other titles or other types of titles.
I think we were talking a couple weeks ago about CR not actually being a game developer. He's more of a
He's a movie director. He's not a game
he's
developer.
he's a movie director, so he doesn't know the nuances of game development or programming.
No, he doesn't. He's very similar to John Smedley. The difference being John Smedley at least was a gamer. But he ran the show at SOE. He bought Variant Entertainment back in '98. Variant Interactive, rather, excuse me. They're the ones who developed EverQuest. They rolled in, became part of SOE, and the rest is history. But Smedley is why we got games like Star Wars Galaxies. Smedley is also why games like Star Wars Galaxies died. So they're very similar, and they don't seem to understand too much about what makes a game, but they're also why these games also exist. So it's a bit of a double-edged.
Yeah, like take his ideas and his brilliance, right? But then say, all right, we will put that into a game. You get no say in the mechanics, though, or like
Well,
minor
yeah.
say. That's all that you need to do. I say that very nonchalantly, but that's harder than said than done, probably.
Well, unfortunately, when you have the money, you could do whatever the hell you want.
Didn't CR's brother have to come in to actually get the company on track?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the nepotism or the company itself.
So, like originally, we were talking about this earlier, Cal. There used to be a lot of feature creep happening back in like 2012, 2013. And then a couple years after that, like CR's brother came in and said, "Stop this shit. Get the game going."
I can see
Maybe
that.
maybe more than just what I just said, but that's the effect that happened. And that's what we have now is that consequences that we have a game that we
With Star Citizen and Planetside, and the similarities are a total lack of understanding about what core issues actually are. What Star Citizen, my concern, is the core issues are fucking basic shit like fucking respawning. Respawning is how you start the game, continue the game, and end the game.
Yep. You're not wrong.
You know, people do talk about the flight model, whatever. You could have a bad flight model and fix it eventually, but if you don't have the foundation built, nothing else matters. I don't like to use analogies, but the only analogy I will use in this sense is like you're building your dream home, but the foundation you place, the first bricks you place are shit. You could have the nicest fucking windows, the greatest drapes, the most beautiful fucking roof you want, but none of it matters if your foundation's garbage. And the foundation for Star Citizen right now is complete garbage. It's a game that's more fun to talk about than play.
Bro, you sound a lot like me fucking 7 years ago. I said the same fucking shit, just in a much not elegant way. It's like, you know, you're building a fucking mansion and hanging the chandelier up and then trying to build around the fucking chandelier. And, you know, now your house looks like shit. Right?
Yeah, no, it's very true.
So, yeah, it's the same analogy essentially. But yeah, I get where you're coming from, man. It's like, you know, you see it with PlanetSide because you were there with that, but I see a lot of similarities with DayZ and Star Citizen. You know, especially when it comes to persistence and the way that, you know, things have been developed over the years. And of course, Matt Lightfoot being one of the lead producers in this game when the persistent universe was first being created. And, you know, you have the DayZ zombie spawning problem with NPCs, right? You know, you see all that in DayZ. It's the exact same shit. You know, the Arma kind of, you know, inventory system, all that stuff is, you know, leftovers from Matt Lightfoot's legacy, right? And that's why I see all these correlations with DayZ, but you see something a little bit more underlying trouble because you've actually worked in the industry from the sound of it. So,
yes, I did.
You know, so like you have a little bit more of an insight than some of us do. But you know, it sounds like, you know, we're on the same page with people in the company seem to be super damn hard-headed and don't like to take L's when they're wrong about stuff, and the community suffers for it, right? And the game suffers. So
I think a lot of it is there might be a part of, you know, not wanting to take L's or you know, stubbornness, but I think a lot of it is they have a very political atmosphere, and I have no inside information to that, but it's the systems you have essentially a game that's trying to be multiple things. You have a game that has a focus on PvP and combat. You have a game that has a second life kind of life sim element to it. You have fucking racing, for God's sakes. You have all these things, and none of them really interact with each other. And to get somebody to agree to a change that's significant for the better of the game, it's very real that they may have to appeal the correct thing, which is why I choose my wording very particularly when I'm writing things down or having a conversation about design. And the game was better for it. The game certainly played a lot better with Lattice, but again, Planeteside's issues were at its core. You could All I could do was stem the bleeding. I couldn't fix it because I didn't have the power to fix it. If I was given absolute power and absolute control, I could absolutely have fixed it. But, there were a lot of things that I simply could not do. But with this game, Star Citizen, with its active development, there's very low chance that they do anything I say, but I don't think that it's not worth me trying, which is why I'm going to present these design documents and at least get the noggin jogging, so to speak, to try and get things. Because I look at a lot of the other YouTube content creators, and I don't like being a quote. I don't like the word influencer. I don't even like YouTube. But I'm only doing it because I'm very serious about trying to get positive change in the game. That's why I don't really make a lot of videos about how to make XYZ or do this, whatever. I'll do whatever it takes to kind of feed the algorithm a little bit, but the meat and potatoes of what I'm making are stuff I'm talking about right now.
Right.
And the goal, that is my overall goal, is to fix this game. And I think that coming from a developer point of view, people may be more inclined to listen to what I have to say, at the very least listen, and then adjust or ignore, adjust what I say to the betterment of the game, or just totally ignore me, but at least listen.
I mean,
That's why
because
go ahead.
because you have such a platform on YouTube and you actually have followers, you'll get people like Salty making react videos to you. So even if you personally are not interested in influencing, you might get influenced, or you might be able to influence them without even trying.
Well, I'm a controversial figure. People won't do that, so I do this all on my own. I'm controversial because people like to either embellish or outright make up things about me. I'm very crude, and I'm certainly politically incorrect. And in today's day and age, that makes you a bad person.
Well,
So these types.
we know about the vent crashing in Planet Side 2. We know about the Horrigan incident in World of Warcraft, but
Right. Well, I bombed. The only one of those that's actually true is the bombing in Planetside 1, which I have on my channel. So I have no issue with that. As far as the World of Warcraft thing goes, that was a 100% setup. I knew what I was doing, and I don't regret it because I thought it was funny as fuck. If I didn't, I wouldn't boast about it on my website, because I certainly don't care about what congressmen think of me, especially in today's day and age. But that is used as an attempt to discredit me, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because people don't give a shit about that stuff anymore. I have a very large community that has followed me for upwards to over 20 years now, and they come from all walks of life. So people now will try to. There's actually a thread on Reddit somebody pointed out to me where some bitch named Min Min was trying to tell people not to watch my channel because I'm a Nazi or whatever. Well, when people call me a Nazi, I just tell them I always play the American tanks and World of Tanks and all that stuff. So I'm not really that much of a Nazi, but they go on to say that shit. So no, those people will never give me a signal boost or anything like that because people are afraid of associating with me, and that's fine because I don't need them. I do often request to these people, if they have like Virgil, I said, hey, if you want to talk about stuff, we should do a video. You can put it on your channel. You can record everything I say, and we can go back and forth. But they always decline. And I think that they decline because I think they know deep down I might make them look stupid.
Well, you do.
So
You do make a lot of them look dumb, and that's
yeah.
why see, I'm aware of all this stuff, Buzz, and that's why when you offered to come talk to me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna take this opportunity to let you come talk and make some videos and a collab, because yeah, these guys, all they want to do is focus on either your past history or your negative personality traits and try to discredit you in what you're saying by any means necessary. And yes, like, this is why I am angry at these guys 100%. Like, yeah, you can have your fucking opinion about someone and their bad sense of humor, right? But that doesn't like discredit like the valid feedback that they're presenting for Star Citizen, right? That was my whole argument in defense of you this entire time, just so you know.
Well, I appreciate that. Matt Higbee was the executive, he's a creative director of Planetside 2, and there was a big kerfuffle when I was hired and taken there to work, because I first started off as an advisor, then I became an employee. And at that time, times were a little bit different back then, and he would get a lot of flack on Twitter about hiring me. So did John Smedley, because John Smedley very famously called called me a homophone. He typed it out and he meant to say homophobe, but he typed out homophone. But even after that, they still put me on the payroll and still talked. And he
When you
actually
say
called.
homophone, all I can think of is a really loud gay guy.
Yeah, well, that's it was a typo because he was a very anyway. But anyway, because his son was gay, so anyway, I guess he got offended or something about something I may or may not have said. But that didn't stop them from listening. And the quote, to go back to the original thing that Higbee had said, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, is I don't have to like the person to like the ideas.
There you go.
No, you could be an ignorant asshole and still be
Yes.
intelligent about game
Yes.
development.
And that is how I view things, because I don't particularly care if people like me or not. I remain very indifferent towards people. I think there's this idea, I do not like Avenger 1. First, because people often ask me that. I don't like him because I know he's a liar, and I know of his type of personality. I don't particularly care about Virgil. I have no negative experiences with Virgil. I wish he would actively talk to me, not because I pine for his attention, but because I think that there could maybe be a medium that we could find and agree on if he's looking at it from a high-level player point of view, and I'm looking at it from a developmental product point of view. And that's one thing I tried to correct myself, is we always called it the product. And that is what it is. People don't like to use that word anymore. But the product is very important. And products are only as good as at least for an MMO, is the game is only as good as the amount of people playing it, because players are your content.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lose too much of your players, you're losing a significant amount of content. And then you have to identify why.
And then you got to fill that void when you can't get the players back.
Right. Well, it creates a tidal wave, because MMO games are a constant state of attrition. And the attrition that you're dealing with is new players, people coming in, checking it out, and then leaving, getting bored of playing another game. So you have to have something that other games don't have, and you also have to have a way to hook them and keep them. And people, when they hear the word hook now, they think of like, oh, something predatory, like daily. No. The hook is the game itself, how fun the game is. And that's what I always go for. And I think that the major gate to getting into the fun gameplay is how accessible it is. If players can't get through the gate, then they don't even have a chance to become hooked. They don't have a chance to. And those are my concerns.
They just become a metric and a number.
They become a metric and a number, and players are always a metric and a number. But then you're looking at what the metric you want them to be is your retention.
Mm-hmm.
You want
How many times does CIG spout the number of citizens they have?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a very silly thing to spout, because we all know people have multiple accounts and everything like that. And it also costs you nothing to create accounts. Users come in and they make a game for SOE did the same shit. It was a free to play game on a site too. And they did the same shit. The difference is that they at one point had actually 1.2 million players that were playing the game. And granted, it was free to play, but that was a significant chunk. However, the game lost, I think it was 40% of its player base over 3 months.
Oof.
And that's where the bad design came in. And I see, hell, even my TTK videos or my TTK discussion stem from what I learned from Planetside. And a lot of the players, so I'll tell you how powerful analytics are. So we could bring up, at that time, any player, and we could see the last thing they did before they logged out. We could see the first thing they did when they logged in. One of the things that I absolutely tried to bring attention to were the amount of players that quit the game after getting one-shotted by a sniper. Planetside snipers were very poorly made. And not only did they have the ability to one-shot you, which no other class did, they also had the ability to cloak and go invisible. So they're all, yes. So the two leading causes of death and players leaving and never logging back in again. Number one were snipers. Number two was any type of HE weapon, any type of vehicle with HE. So whatever was farming people was what caused people to quit. The biggest one was the Liberator. The Liberator was a bomber that could hover and fire massive HE shells over and over again. And people would hover them, myself included, would hover them and farm players. and they would quit. And it took, and here's the downside. So this all happened. They took a fucking 2-month 2-month break. They launched a game. They took 2 months off. And in those 2 months, they lost about 40% of their player base. About 30% in the first 2 months and another 10% in the third month. By the time they got back, everybody was gone.
Jeez.
And they never recovered.
Like, as far as uniqueness, Star Citizen is in a very unique position because they are the first ones to try, I want to say, a space simulator in the scale that they're attempting.
Sure.
We just
That's absolutely
need
correct.
we just need their server meshing to work as they want it to, and we just need the servers to be stable enough to have larger numbers.
Correct.
And then after that, everything, hopium speaking right now, should be smooth sailing.
Novelty wears off fast in the modern human brain. And while there is no doubt what SC is doing is original and nobody else is doing it, it is very much a novelty. And you still have to have the core mechanics there. The core gameplay elements have to be there. The moment-to-moment experience has to be good. That way, everything else built on top of that can actually shine and stand out. If we can say, I don't think it's hopium at all. I would never use that phrase, but if we could say, oh, well, this game is very cool and impressive because no other game lets you, do this. Well, very cool. That's very nice. That's very neat. But why does the game suck? And then I'll give you a litany of reasons why it sucks. And then suddenly the novelty of flying a ship and landing on a planet and leaving the planet now suddenly means a whole lot less because the rest of the game sucks. To me, you have to have the core developed, the foundation as it was, as I stated earlier. And that's what they're lacking. And that's what my concern is that when you don't have a foundation to build off of, anything else you really add is just fluff. It's lipstick on a pig, whatever analogy you want to use.
Ooh, look at this flashy new thing. Ooh, look at mining. Ooh, look at salvage. Ooh, look at cargo containers. Ooh, look at the Hull C. Oh, wait, don't look at the Hull C. It's glitching out for a second. Look away.
Yes,
It might fix
yes.
itself.
Yes, don't look at them. Exactly. And those are what my concerns are, is we just don't have a game. We have a tech demo, which is fine to a degree. But when like I said, to go all the way back to the beginning, when I don't see the core concept in the game yet, I become very concerned.
Yeah, it's been
Is
like
it
that
possible?
for a lot of us since the beginning. Like for the last, I would say, I'd be fair, 5 years. A lot of us that have been around for the last 10 feel that way, Buzz. Like it's been this long, and we still don't have we don't even have a fucking Star Marine, bro. We don't have just a basic aspect of the game that people can come back and play, right? It's always got to be some buggy ass, fucked up, oh, try again later or buy a new ship to have fun now situation, right? There's nothing here that's consistent enough to keep people engaged, whether it be in an arena shooter of whatever flavor you like, or any merit to the persistent universe, because there's no progress, and things get wiped, and then of course all the stuff we were just talking about with the tedium and then the 30Ks and all this other shit. This stuff stacks the fuck up on human psychology, right? And soon it's not so much a novelty wearing away as do I really want to put up with this shit today, right? Kind of.
The answer is usually no.
Yeah, exactly.
The answer is usually.
Yeah.
I mean, is
Or
it
is it-
possible
go ahead.
that they have put so much focus on Squadron 42 that the PU is just suffering? And because now that Squadron 42 is feature complete and we should be getting those features into the PU, that will alleviate some of the major concerns that you're having.
No, because Squadron 42 is the ultimate scapegoat that they have. And Squadron 42 being complete, whatever features you bring into Squadron 42 are not going to address all of the other underlying issues of the game, of its core. That's why I keep using the word core. It's not a buzzword. The core is the issue. It's a game without any rules. What are the rules in Star Citizen? What when I say, go ahead.
With Squadron 42, before we lose that for a second, the features of Squadron 42 that are coming are more comprehensive FPS, a better UI, and master modes, right? And other than maybe master modes, the better UI and like the FPS combat, maybe the FPS combat is core. The UI is just fluff. Like the main problems of crashing, like being able to get back into the action in a decent amount of time, like all of those aren't going to be fixed by anything in Squadron 42 because it's a single player experience.
I would argue that the UI, as right now, is so damn clunky that it turns off players.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It does.
Like when I get in my ship and I try to hit quantum to go somewhere and I can't, honestly, I just log off right there in the hangar. I don't even care about anything else. The ship will be there for about 10 minutes, whatever.
Yeah,
Get
you're
a
correct.
wing of fighters together and everybody jumps and one person can't, and then you're waiting at the next OM, and then because you're waiting for somebody to quantum, a bounty hunter catches up to you, and now you're one fighter down. That person has to respawn, come back to you, get back to the action. It all stacks on top of itself.
So the question I ask everybody here, and I'll ask it to you as well, is what do you think a big problem is? Like, how would you define a big problem? Mr. Fate Kembo.
A big problem like pertaining to the game or just a big problem in general?
Just a big problem in general. What is a big problem?
I would define a big problem, a problem that you cannot solve without major reconstruction.
Okay. Pretty good. And that's true. A big problem to me is a lot of little problem.
I love that. I'm gonna use that one for my job.
That was my legit answer. A bunch of little shit stacking up
Yes.
to create a conglomerate, massive fucking problem. Yes.
That is correct. And CIG's stance has always been, oh, well, it's a little thing, we'll fix it later. But there's a lot of fix it later.
Yeah, it's been that way for 10 years, right? Well, we'll just fix
Yeah.
it later. Or we'll just fuck with it later, right?
I want to put this bug in your ear, Buzz, since you're making that document and you're making a video. Your idea about spawn points, you mentioned racing. It would literally make the racing loop more possible.
Oh my
And there are
God.
tons of racers out there that don't play the game.
Bro, she's right. Like 100%. When I was doing my Vandal Blade stuff, like, oh, it was so annoying, dude. Every time I'd crash, I'd have to go back out there, deal with the annoying aspect of the race, either not starting, checkpoints not doing anything right, Dude, having a spawn point on racetracks, you're on to something, man. I didn't even think about that until she said that. Like,
I'm glad she said that because I do have a part in here about racing, and it's under the appendix here. It's respawn examples. I go under them, and I do mention racing. And the example is called Racer Meets Rock. A racer practicing how to operate a Nox at high speed accidentally hits a rock, flips, and blows up while on her stick. Spawn options under our system would be Lorville, the player's primary residence, Personnel 1, the hard regeneration point, Everest Harbor, the nearest stations point, HDMS whatever, the mining station nearest to where the player died. In this scenario, the racer chooses HDMS whatever, where they can quickly pull another Nox and then go back to practice piloting a coffin strapped in. So this is so racing is something. So my goal with any design document, and I learned this at SOE, is to incorporate as many gameplay elements and gameplay types as possible. So you want this idea that's being presented, no matter what the idea is, you present it in a way that it fixes as many potential problems as possible. So yes, racing was one of them that I included. Actually, I hit them all. I hit racing. Again, very much not done, and things will be elaborated on. Because I do like to keep things short. I believe that brevity is the soul of wit. Certain things you cannot keep short, but you don't have to be too verbose on things. But yes, racing is one of the ones I definitely did touch on.
I'm excited
like
for your
they could
video.
I'm excited.
I feel like
for
they could
it, too.
also work on Arena Commander better, but
Oh, dude, but yeah, that's been my core thing, and we've beaten that like a dead horse already, alright? Everyone knows Arena Commander and Star Marine's fucked, and it needs to be fixed, and Turbulent needs to, again, pull the dick out of their ass and fix that fucking website to allow DJ and his team to do what they need to do to get it fucking working. That's the TLD of Arena Commander.
They could put the whole Arena Commander racing gameplay loop in Arena Commander.
Yeah.
Like they could make that the entire racing gameplay loop, where if they want to make it like a virtual game inside of the game, effectively, where you're logging in from your character in game, fine. But
My thing, yes, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. My thing with that is I would actually like as few things in Arena Commander as possible. I would like for everything that's in AC to be available to you. why is AC popular, or at least why do I do AC? This is what also spurred me on to making this document. Is I play AC because it's fucking accessible, even if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I can respawn and play. I can pick a ship and play. Now, I'm not advocating for that extreme level of accessibility, but what I'm advocating, because I do think certain downtime, not unproductive downtime, but I think productive downtime is important. An example to me of productive downtime is loading my ship with cargo. That to me is productive downtime. I'm doing something, I'm mentally engaged, and I believe that there is a skill to the efficiency in which you put cargo in your ship. To me,
Legos.
what is. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like Legos, Tetris. Yeah, that's the whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, ineffective or not ineffective, but bad downtime to me, or a waste of time, is riding a fucking tram.
Mhm.
That to me is a waste of fucking time.
Have you ever played?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the novelty experience that you
Yes.
described. The first time it's cool, the second time meh, the third time you're wasting my time.
Yes, I don't want to do this. And that's, if people didn't hate riding trains, they wouldn't be setting their station spawns up first things first, because people cannot stand riding.
Yeah.
And they understand it too. They keep speeding up the fucking elevators. So they obviously know. They keep speeding up the trains. The trains now in Microtech move so fucking fast. I'm a big believer in abstract. If I can, what does that train do that I can't just step into the train and imagine it teleporting to the other side? Like, why does that take you out of it? Is because immersion is such a silly word, because immersion means a lot of things to a lot of different people. To me, I could be immersed in a book. I could be immersed in a book. An immersion to me is how well something is presented, and the story of it, or whatever it may be, or how well it's made. I don't particularly find riding the train fucking immersive. I don't find public transportation in real life immersive, and think that this is something I want to do in a video game as well.
Right. Unless, of course, you live in London, where it's normal to embrace public transportation, right?
Yeah,
So this
right.
won't make the tram system any better, but it would be interesting that you're riding a tram to the starport on Microtech, and you see a Carrack flying by. Like that could be like cool little snapshots, right? That could be like a little nugget of coolness, but still a fucking train.
Yeah, I mean, you see things happening outside. That's pretty neat. But if we're developing our game around cool sites that may or may not happen, then you have Star Citizen. PU.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm not.
If all the
I'm not gonna
gameplay
say it's
that we
perfect,
design
but
is around sightseeing, then the experience really is the future of Star Citizen, and that is boring.
Yeah, it's he's not wrong. I see what he's trying to say, and I understand it's very valid. It does go into one of those things, but that to me is the fluff that you get when you already have a solid foundation to build on.
yeah,
Because when you don't have the solid foundation, all that shit, then that stuff becomes people start to view it with contempt. And that's how I am right now. I view a lot of that stuff with contempt. I don't go to the fucking Reddit because I hate all Reddits, but also because how many times I see, oh, look at this fucking screenshot I took. Oh, awesome, dude. Another screenshot. Everybody takes fucking screenshots. I get it. It looks nice. So what?
Exactly.
So fucking what?
Screenshots, patch notes, and drama. That's all it is. That's all
Yeah.
it is.
If that's all your community is producing, then there's something wrong with the game. And now the community is, on the other side, is I don't like the word community, because to me it's all fake. People are like, oh, you go, oh, this community is so fucking nice. Oh, shut the fuck up. People aren't nice. They want to be nice. They're nice. They want to get brownie points and updates. People aren't just, I don't buy that bullshit.
Me neither.
But this is where people start to have my abrasive personality, and they don't like me, and that's fine too. But a community is a one that you run, or that you're a part of, that and care. I have a community. I know people. I have people outside my community and other guilds or outfits or orgs, whatever you want to call them, that I also get along with. That's fine. I don't give a shit about random John Doe in this universe. I don't give a. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that content creators, and I do loathe that phrase, have anything other than their own branding in mind. Like I said earlier, I don't like doing YouTube. It's another job that I don't get money from, because I refuse ads.
Well, of course, you have to have your own brand when you do your own channels.
Correct.
That's just the name of the game when you're air quote content creator, right? Or you're representing someone else's logo, correct?
Right, but when I say brand building, you're not incorrect. But when I say brand building is you do everything at the cost of getting your brand done. Meaning that it goes right back to what you said before. They're defending a flight model because of what? Because they want to ego or whatever it may be. It's because of their brand. They're not willing to tear down or potentially risk their brand to have a better game.
Correct, and that's why the original fallout of Renegade happened to begin with so many years ago. And I was trying to warn Imperium that the same don't fall into that same trap, of trying to maintain some type of image over the health of your community, right? Because it's just like the older Renegades have said. The game is not in a state to rally around and focus your group around, or dedicate a single task, right? So this will inevitably cause fractures and rifts at some point, whether it be in your belief system or your structure or in whatever, right? When you build a gaming community around what a game originally was, which is what a rated commander is, okay? And the game evolves into something different than what you originally made your community around. You have two choices. And those two, either A, you go with the changes and you embrace and you adapt and you change your structure and go with it, or you hard-headedly go against the wind and literally, tear yourself apart trying to maintain that status or that image or that mentality, if you will, right?
Right, yeah.
It falls apart because it's unmaintainable at that point, right? You're like, if you can't change your group according to what the game is changing into, then, or is going to change into, then all I can say is that you saw the history of Renegade and you saw the history of other orgs in the game that have fractured because of similar either drama or game-related situations point of view.
Yes, they're playing make-believe. And you can only play make-believe for so long. And then
Correct.
eventually reality catches up to you, and reality is often very heavy, and it will eventually crush you if you do expect it. And reality, yes. So when I talk about that, my brand, if you had to give me a brand, is simply just talking about the game and trying to discuss things that people are not discussing. And that is why I do reach out to people. Virgil, when I make a video about me or whatever, but nobody has the cojones to sit there and talk. So, I'm glad that you did. And it's people either maybe they think it's an elaborate trap. I tell people this all the time. There's no trap. There's no plan here. There's nothing like that. I think the discussion is good. And I think that these people who have views that are the polar opposite of mine, we could potentially benefit from one another, but they will never do that. I keep tabs on Virgil. I saw he made a video and it was not very popular, and that's fine. Not every video has to be popular. But the position of the quote-unquote top 1% or the elite, they're an infinitesimally small portion of your player base. And the problem is that when you talk about that, they assume that everybody that's not them is the extreme opposite end, which are just mega bad. I never argue for the case of mega bads, nor do I ever argue for the case of the elite. I always talk about the average player, and I'm very specific. And this, again, I don't want to bore you too much, but the majority of our players in Planetside were dead average. They were the majority. They were not bad, and they were not amazing. They were very average KDs, average scores, average playtime, very average. When they started to leave, we were just left with two types of players. The mega bads. And mega bads are pretty fucking stupid, so they probably don't know any better. They might be playing the game, and they also don't pay anything. So they don't pay a whole lot. This was a free-to-play game. And then we had our mega goods, or sweaties, or whatever you want to call them, our elites. The funny thing was that from profit margins, the largest influx of cash from microtransactions came in from average players. And average players were all, by and large, when I say by and large, I give you the exact number, 85%.